The profound and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning. This morning, I have the distinct joy of introducing again, my teacher, Abbot Gaelyn Godwin. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And I'm sure you can say more, but just some context. Abbot Gaelyn and I and Charlie all lived and practiced together at Tassajara for many years in the 90s and 2000s. And now she's the abbot of the Houston Zen Center and have been there for maybe like almost 20 years. Is that right? Close to 20 years, if not 20 years. And I did priest ordination and Dharma transmission with Gaelyn over the years. And also I forget the name of your title with the American Soto Zen, the ASCB. Gaelyn does this wonderful thing where she links to many people in the community and also in Japan, and has practiced in Japan and in Hawaii and in Tassajara. And one of the great gifts that I think she brings is a capacity to create connections across lots of cultures, actually. So thank you so much again for being here this morning, dear teacher.
And thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to see you. I know a bunch of you on the screen. I wish we could be in person, but it's great to see you. Jisho Roshi, I see you there. Great to see you, dear old friend. And Sarah and Charlie, Barton, wherever you are, I see you. The screen moves around. It's a big, what do you call it? Mahjong or something. There you are. Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's great to see you. This way of being connected, I think we're doing the best we can in this pandemic, and I really appreciate the effort of all of you for showing up. It's true, I have been in Houston. I've lived in Houston now for 18 years, and I started visiting before that while I still lived at Tassajara, while Sarah and Charlie were still there. But I know some of our members choose not to come on Zoom. That's probably true for you guys also. Some of them just don't want to do this format, but those of us who do, we're making the best of it. So I hope you're also staying. We are staying in touch with the people who won't come on Zoom, which is a bit of a challenge, but this is our vow. So today, speaking of vow, I really want to talk about something about responsibility in our practice. Move my things around here. And Zen, let's say Zen is to be present and aware in our life as it is right now. We can say it's present, being present in open awareness of our living being, of our living world, aware of interdependence, aware of the real nature of our life. Abiding in presence, bare awareness, the subtle awareness of living consciousness. But the question I want to raise today, which I've been exploring recently, is the edges of this kind of awareness. So what is the cutting edge of your practice? Where's the subtle edge between abiding in your life as it is and its environment right now, and on the other side of the edge, not abiding in presence? Where's the joy and happiness in your practice? You know, joy and happiness are the contents of freedom. Freedom, liberation contains joy, is joyous, and the liberated and spacious mind can contain all the other mental factors and experiences, but joy and happiness are there prominently along with them. This is the teaching of the Buddha and the baseline of Dogen Zenji's teachings. So the Buddha teaches responsibility, also called karma. And the word responsibility carries a lot of moral weight in our world, doesn't it? It carries two words, response and ability, the ability to respond. So the teachings, in my understanding, are aimed at releasing us into the ability to respond, to accept full responsibility. And in fact, to more than accept, to seek to understand the full extent of our capacity for responsibility. And this comes from, naturally, from our realization that all things are interconnected throughout time. And when we realize liberation, when we are free, we begin to imagine that everything we do can have a beneficial result. With every intentional action, we are able to provide help and ease, even when we don't know it. The ability to help is very close to the responsibility to help. So the idea of responsibility, or the other side, helplessness, might be a cutting edge for Bodhisattva. And is it a cutting edge for you? Is it a cutting edge for me? In real liberated practice, responsibility is a wonderful achievement. It's a joy. It also means power. To be responsible is to have power, the ability to make things happen. And the edges, so abiding in the boundless mind of liberation, Dogen Zenji saw that realization of the boundless mind was not difficult for practitioners of his day. The teaching of the four Brahma Viharas is an old original teaching of the Buddha, the four boundless minds of loving kindness, boundless loving kindness, boundless compassion, boundless joy for others, and boundless equanimity, transformative practices for cutting through limited dualistic thinking. But Dogen Zenji saw that clinging to the idea of the boundless mind and turning away from edges was a problem, because it is possible to begin to cling to boundlessness, to seek to abide in bliss and boundlessness. In Dogen Zenji's time, many of the wandering seekers were considered by the ordinary people of the day to be unreliable, irresponsible, and not accountable to precept practice. And Dogen Zenji's writing in Bindawa addresses some of the wanderers and provides some edges for them in practice. I saw this one time training in Japan at Hoshinji, where I was training. Harada Seke told the story of somebody who'd been there a little bit before I was there, who had what he considered to be a major enlightenment experience, what Harada Roshi considered to be a major awakening, which he didn't acknowledge in people. After that, he never acknowledged it in people. So he acknowledged it in one practitioner there, and that person was liberated and joyous, left the monastery because there was no more need for the structure of practice, the structure of Zen. He was free. And he wandered around Japan, and eventually Harada Roshi told us that he had wasted it. Without the formal trellis of practice, his practice gradually, I'm not sure what word to use, but what Harada Roshi said was he wasted it. So usually when edges are reintroduced to practice, they feel very similar to the edges that each of us has worked with in the past in our lives. But in Zen practice, it can become more glaring. It feels more obvious when an edge has shown up. So for instance, if someone is worried about others not being responsible, that individual might take on more responsibility themselves. So in our world, where we see the consequences of carelessness, about resources, about all sorts of things, the kind of carelessness of not knowing who precisely is responsible or what is responsible, that becomes a signal for us to take on more responsibility. And this can tire a bodhisattva out. Not knowing the edge of responsibility can really wear a person down. So being tired out by intentional good actions is one of the edges for a bodhisattva. And our beloved bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara took on the responsibility of saving all beings in a hell realm. And when she or he, different times showed up in different ways, had finished the job of freeing all beings in hell, she turned around and saw countless new beings entering the hell realm, and her head exploded. So Amida Buddha gave her a new head, and Avalokiteshvara went to work, cleared everybody out of the hell realm, freed all the beings, and turned around, and he saw another myriad beings flooding in, and his head exploded. So this happened 11 times before Amida Buddha finally gave Avalokiteshvara a non-exploding head. And this image of Avalokiteshvara is a very common representation, beautiful face with a stack of 11 heads on top. And on the final head, there's a little image of Amida Buddha, who was a protector of Avalokiteshvara. So 11 times Avalokiteshvara reached the edge. And in other stories, Avalokiteshvara has 1,000 hands and eyes, myriad hands and eyes. And each of us can be one of the hands of Avalokiteshvara, one of the eyes. And one of the tests of responsibility is the ability to accept that we're just one of the hands. That's our job, to be just one of the hands and eyes, and not even necessarily the biggest or the most skillful hand, just a hand. So is it our edge? It's an edge for some bodhisattvas to want to be all those hands, or to think that hand is too small, it doesn't have a big enough tool, I've got to do that hand's job too. This is one of our edges. So one of the messages in Dogen Zenji's writing, Bendowa, is to encourage practitioners of the time, and therefore us, because we're still in the same time, is to come down to our appropriate size, bringing monks back down to size, bringing us back down to size is an edge. Yes, we are all Buddha nature with the same consciousness as Buddha, and we are here now in the environment in which we were born, with the families, friends, and cities we now have. This is it, and it is wonderful. For bodhisattvas, the teaching of the 6 paramitas is very important. And today I'd like to talk about 3 aspects of each one, with a mind toward bringing some edges to awareness, because as Mahayana Buddhists, we practice the paramitas throughout our practice life, and some of them are more resonant for us at different times than others. Some of them seem not interesting, but the Buddha's teaching in the Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra is to draw out edges even within each of the paramitas. So the 6 are, our friends, generosity, to cultivate the attitude of generosity; ethics, refraining from harm; patience, the ability not to be perturbed by anything; energy, to find joy in what is virtuous, positive, or wholesome; meditative concentration, not to be distracted; and number 6, wisdom, the perfect discrimination of phenomena, all knowable things. And then also in the Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra and the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Ornament Sutra, there are 4 more: skillful means, power, aspiration, and primordial wisdom. Dogen Zenji wanted to remove the stuck places from wandering monks, and this is how it works. Working in the dynamo of the perfection of wisdom is how the stuck places get maybe first identified, but eventually dissolved. The paramitas themselves are meant to dissolve stuck places. They benefit others. It looks like we're practicing them to benefit others, but the other side of the paramitas is that they profoundly benefit us. They're the bases of training for bodhisattvas. And then you kind of wonder, like, after a few stages of their growth, do bodhisattvas stop practicing the paramitas? They've been on the path for a long time. They may even be level 7, non-regressing bodhisattvas, really advanced beings. So do they stop practicing? Do they remain in blissful repose, just helpful all the time? Once they've perfected the paramitas, do they just ignore them? Actually, they do not stop diligently practicing and explicitly naming and attending to the 6 perfections. So this is how they maintain the great vow to return to the world of afflictions and help sentient beings. So one of the paradoxical teachings of the Mahayana is that bodhisattvas can achieve enlightenment, but they choose to come back. So here is the way it's described in the Samdhinirmochana Sutra, the third turning of the wheel. Each chapter of this great sutra has a different bodhisattva in dialogue with the Buddha, Shakyamuni. And the one chapter is a dialogue between our friend Avalokiteshvara, great bodhisattva of compassion, and Shakyamuni Buddha. So our friend Avalokiteshvara appears and asks the Buddha, how is it that bodhisattvas continue to advance along the path? Buddha tells him, Avalokiteshvara, it is because of four aspects. Bodhisattvas are skilled regarding the blissful state of nirvana. They are able to quickly attain it. Having given up both that quick attainment and that peaceful state for the benefit of sentient beings, they wish to undergo for a very long time the manifold sufferings that arise without cause and without purpose. Therefore, they are called those who progress by way of extensive aspirations, those who have auspicious aspirations, and those with the power of aspirations. So there's the paradox. How is it that they advance? And the Buddha says, they are skilled regarding the blissful state of nirvana. They are able to quickly attain it, but they give it up and give up that quick attainment and that peaceful state for the benefit of sentient beings, and they wish to undergo for a very long time the manifold sufferings that arise without cause and without purpose. Therefore, they are called those who progress by way of extensive aspirations, those who have auspicious aspirations, and those with the force of aspirations. So we see bodhisattvas in our life around us who could live a peaceful and contented life, but they choose to engage in the manifold sufferings that arise without cause and without purpose. So we see here Buddha Shakyamuni telling the great bodhisattva that achieving the blissful and boundless state of nirvana is very straightforward, not difficult. But the edge of the Mahayana is to take this realization of interconnectedness and return to understand the situation of the world. And as it says in the Samdhinirmochana Sutra, the greatest bodhisattvas are those with the force of aspiration. And I would like to use a word that's kind of challenging for aspiration, the word hope. So here it's the force of hope, of auspicious, hopeful aspiration to return to the world. And because of the aspiration, which also means free choice, or the choice to seek the responsibility and the power to help, bodhisattvas vow to remain in the world with its manifold sufferings. Then Buddha Shakyamuni goes on to teach Avalokiteshvara the inner subtle meanings of the 6 paramitas that bodhisattvas work with throughout their lives. And I want to tell you the 3 that are within each of the 6 paramitas as explorations of our own individual edges. So see, you might notice that some of them seem quite easy. Some cause the mind to just turn away. And some are just, you might see an edge of your understanding and practice, maybe. So first, generosity has 3 aspects: giving the Dharma, giving material things, and granting fearlessness. Ethics has 3 aspects: ethics that overcomes non-virtue, ethics that engages in virtue, and ethics that engages in the welfare of sentient beings. Patience has 3 aspects: patience that endures injury, patience that does not consider one's own suffering at all, and patience in discerning the Dharma. And that 3rd aspect of discerning the Dharma has 3 aspects. 1, not being frightened by the teachings of emptiness. 2, not being too attached to the 2 extremes of existence and non-existence. And 3, being firm with respect to engaging in practice. Those are part of patience. Effort has 3 aspects. Effort that is armor, effort applied to virtue, and effort applied for the welfare of sentient beings. Each of these also has three aspects, but I'm just going to read the one that is effort that is armor. Effort that is armor has three aspects: putting on the armor of great love. 2, armor that is the steady force of great compassion. And 3, armor that is the steady force of great effort. That's the armor of bodhisattvas. The armor of great love, the armor of the steady force of great compassion, and the armor that is the steady force of great effort. There is effort applied to virtue, relying on meaning with great faith, engaging in virtue with great practice, and infusing all sentient beings with great dedications. And the fifth paramita of concentration has three aspects. In concentration, our meditation practice, the samadhi of blissful abiding is an antidote to suffering and the afflictions because it is peaceful and non-conceptual. The samadhi that manifestly achieves good qualities, and the samadhi that manifestly achieves the welfare of sentient beings. And the sixth paramita of wisdom has three aspects: focusing on conventional truth, focusing on ultimate truth, and focusing on the welfare of sentient beings. One thing that Avalokiteshvara was curious about and asked the Buddha was, why do these 6 paramitas always appear in the same order? You may have noticed they're generally presented in the same order. And Buddha had an answer for that. The Buddha said, Avalokiteshvara, it is because the 6 perfections serve as bases for progressively higher achievements. Through generosity, bodhisattvas do not focus exclusively on their bodies and physical resources, and thereby attain ethics. Those who practice ethics and guard their moral practice become patient. Those who have patience initiate effort. Those who initiate effort achieve concentration, and those who achieve concentration attain wisdom that transcends the world. Then in Mahayana, there are 4 additional paramitas, and they're described in great, beautiful detail in the Flower Ornament Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra. But here the Buddha describes them as assisting the first 6. So the final 4 assist the first 6. The 7th is upaya, skillful means. And the Buddha teaches that this assists the first 3 perfections of generosity, ethics, and patience. And for me, this is quite understandable. We need skillful means in order to practice, to know when and what kind of generosity is necessary, and how to apply ethics, and when to practice patience of enduring or patience of understanding. This is all deeply connected to skillful means. The 8th paramita of aspiration assists the perfection of effort. And this one is extremely important. Buddha tells Avalokiteshvara that bodhisattvas may not be able to make all the effort necessary to overcome afflictions. And just as us, when the edge is taking on too much effort because so much needs to be done, this is identified as an edge for bodhisattvas throughout time. And the Buddha teaches that this paramita of aspiration enhances effort by the power of the aspiration, the power of the hope. We aspire to be more effective. We hope to relieve suffering. We aspire to heal the world. We use whatever size hand we've got, and that is the power. So that is the power of the aspiration, assisting our effort, which resonates through the world in ways we are unable to identify. The 9th of the paramitas is power. The paramita of power assists concentration, and Buddha says that achieving the power of reflection over the excellent practices is the perfection of power. So the ability to reflect on these excellent powers, excellent practices, is the perfection of power. To not turn away from understanding that one of the qualities of an advanced bodhisattva is power. And the 10th paramita is exalted wisdom, which is described quite elaborately in the Flower Ornament Sutra. But basically, it assists the perfection of wisdom. Wisdom enhances wisdom, really opening us to deeper insight into the nature of reality. So all the aspects of the paramitas come into play throughout our lives all the time. And I have a very small example for a decision that we just made here in Houston at our little Zen center. We had to decide, there's a surge of COVID cases in Houston, in Texas. It's one of the hot spots. So we had to get together and discuss whether we were going to stay open, because we've been open to in-person visits. And we looked at the science. We have a lot of scientists in the group, and we discussed the likelihood of increasing people's mental ill health by being isolated, because the consequences on people's mental health in isolation have been dire and more severe than anticipated. So that was one factor. And the other factor that we took into consideration was that all of our members have been compliant with the vaccination protocol. Everybody's got a vaccination. And the people who would be compliant of a new lockdown are the same people who are compliant with vaccination. We reasoned. So we decided that we would stay open in person, still requiring vaccinations. But we would go back to limiting the number so we're not too crowded, and requiring everyone to wear masks indoors. So we used our wisdom and our care for others, our care for the suffering others, to come to a balanced decision. And we involved everybody in the discussion. And so we are open. We met this morning again in person, fully vaccinated people. And actually there were some new people who'd applied online to come, and the joy in people's faces as we get to see each other in person is a force that sort of vibrated through the room. The joy in being able to actually meet each other's eyes in person, very palpable. So it helped us understand why we meet in person again. But decisions like this, decisions and actions like this, create edges, temporary pathways in the great boundless mind of reality. And it shows our understanding that the 6 paramitas turn in multiple directions at once. Again, first, when we practice these paramitas, we do it for the benefit of others often, but then we finally realize the benefit in ourselves and the non-dualistic nature of the paramitas. So I'm really glad I get to meet with you today. I wish we could meet in person, but it's really wonderful to see your faces on the screen. Thank you very much. I forget the protocol. Do I do the closing chant?
Well, we usually do question and comments, and then the closing chant. Yes.
That's so cool.
Sorry.
No, that's questions and discussion in the whole Dharma teaching. That's brilliant. I think we'll copy that.
And it usually works for people to just unmute themselves. Well, I'll have a look at the gallery, and sometimes people will do that raise hand function. I'll keep an eye out for that. And we've been practicing with leaving a little room for digesting and telling us, working together with it's okay. Nobody's getting too nervous. We have the patient capacity, and letting people kind of take in. And what's been nice about that is, we're hearing from more folks, not just the folks who have a quick response,
That's been our practice for years, as you know, because people in the South tend to allow a lot of space between questions. And so I have to tell people who come and give talks to wait a long time, take a couple of sips of tea between questions, because people wait a long time. We're high level of politeness here. Maybe not a high level of vaccination, but a high level of politeness.
Can I ask a question?
It may, yes.
Yes. Sorry, I can't see you. Oh, yes, I can see you. Could you explain a little bit more what you mean by edge? Does edge make the practice real? Is that what you mean? Is that the paradox with, wanting to help and also taking care of ourselves? Could you please comment on that? Thank you.
That's a very, very good question. I think both of those are good descriptions of edges. It's any place that boundlessness gets a concept. And sometimes that's quite challenging. Sometimes it's just a place where the mind starts to work again, make distinctions. This is good, this is bad, this is true, this is not true. Those are actually quite subtle edges, but then there are also really strong edges in practice. But in a real way, also, all the forms that we initiate at our Zen centers are edges of practice. So when people walk into our Zendo, probably your Zendo too, there's a bow. Those are edges. And you do this kind of movement when you get to your cushion. Perhaps you've been told not to push the cushions around with your feet. Those are edges. Those are coming up against just spontaneous movement and expression. So I think all of us are kind of used to having forms and constraints, but once you have achieved the boundless mind, which Dogen Zenji and Shakyamuni said was pretty easy, you really see an edge. Well, why can't I just do that? Why isn't it okay just to walk into the Zendo with shoes on? That has become unconscious training in most of our minds, but when you bring it to consciousness, that's actually an edge. That's something going against just free expression.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great question, because I don't mean it to have like a specific definition. It's just a place to work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for an incredible talk, Gaelyn, that had so much meat in it. It had so much information, and I was trying to keep up as you talked. It was there was just so much packed into it. And I'm wondering about the whole issue of impulsivity in human beings, and sometimes the equation of that with spontaneous joy. And I was feeling like when you, whether it's Zen or anything else, when you engage in a practice and take on a discipline, you're sort of committing to a certain shape of behaviors. And I'm just wondering about your take on, sometimes when we think of letting go, it translates to spontaneity, to impulsivity, correctly or incorrectly. And I would love to hear your thoughts about your talk and the issues of edges, creating this container that we've all mutually agreed to live in, for better or for worse, skillfully or not skillfully, and the issue of impulsivity, spontaneity, letting go, and what that really means.
Thanks for giving me such an easy question, Judy. That's really great.
You're welcome.
But in fact, I do think about that quite a bit. And in a way, the spontaneity, free expression is what we hope for in Zen. But freedom is, real freedom is the result of practice and discipline. So without knowing what the alternatives are, it isn't really freedom. It's just organic motion. So freedom results from, there's a great quote that somebody just told me recently that Suzuki Roshi said, but unfortunately I can't remember it. I'll try to look it up for you. But freedom comes out of our practice of within the, on the trellis of the forms. When we understand that, then we're really free. When we understand interconnectedness and the impact that we have on other people, that's freedom. When we feel isolated and not interconnected with other people, that's impulsivity. We're not aware of the impact we're having on people. Yeah.
Could you say that again? I want to write that down. That is so splendid.
Oh yeah, well, luckily it's being recorded, so if I don't remember.
That's
When
great.
we realize we're interconnected and we understand our impact on other people and we feel responsibility for it, that's freedom. When we think of ourselves as isolated and unaware of our impact on other people, that's just organic action. That's what you called it, impulsivity.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Gaelyn,
Yes.
hi,
Hi,
it's
Annette.
Annette. Hi,
Yeah.
good to see you. Oh my
Good to see
goodness,
you. Yeah.
lovely. So very, very rich. It seems like there's certainly things and ways of addressing our life that can keep us very, very busy and engaged. The word you brought up, hope, it's it's a word that it's kind of a trigger word for me, because I think at some point I had heard that isn't really something that Buddhists, it isn't a word to integrate into Buddhist practice. And when I find myself thinking, oh boy, it would be nice to hope for something pleasant or otherwise, and then I think, oh, but perhaps not. It's not being with things as they are. Could you highlight that word a little bit for me?
I think I like you, I've heard teachings over the years that hope is delusional because it's not accepting the way things actually are. I have heard that.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say the path to freedom is to give up hope. But that sounds that's written across the gates of hell, right? Abandon hope, all ye who enter here, or something. So in my feeling and study, to me, what could be more hopeful than the Bodhisattva vow? Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. And I think that clarifying the power of the aspirational part of that, rather than the measurable action part of that, is what these teachings are about. So otherwise people say that's just one of those airy things that Buddhists say, beings are numberless, I've got to save them. But I think it's really meant to be an important statement that we make over and over again, and that we feel the power of the statement itself. And that's what's going out into the world. And then we get more clarity about, this limited human body's actual responsibility for it. I feel I have total responsibility for the hope. I really want people to be free from suffering. I really hope they are. And yet I have to be realistic when I think about what my hand is up to, how far it can go, and that whatever it is that my hand can do is powerful, has power in the world.
Thank you. That's a lovely imagery and a lovely reminder. Thanks.
Thank you, Annette. Good to see you. Roberta, hi.
Unmute. Hi, good morning, Gaelyn.
Good morning, Roberta.
I have not seen you in probably 20 years. I remember you distinctly giving a Dharma talk at Green Gulch. And I have to bring this up because I always associate it with you when I see your name. You gave a talk on the film A Beautiful Mind. I don't know if you remember that, but it really was so powerful for me that, and it had a lot to do with delusion. And this character, who is this brilliant mathematician, is delusional. And it affected me in ways that just kept kind of informed me in different areas of my life, that being part of a practice is seeing everything in relationship to Dharma, and to see it in relationship to what you were speaking of, the edges. I just want to thank you for that. It really, and you were so joyful at that time. Just also another memory of you. That was very sweet and powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roberta. Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. I have this irresistible urge to tell you a story about, I can make it really brief, about what happened today at our Zen Center, because we invite people to give way-seeking mind talks, and the person who gave the way-seeking mind talk today talked about how he had come to practice. His name's Kent. It was a beautiful talk. And at one point he talked about a crucial moment that brought him to practice that he's never forgotten. He was having a panic attack on a plane coming back from Puerto Vallarta, and his partner, now husband, said, "Here," and took his headphones and plugged them into his phone and played a guided body scan from John Kabat-Zinn, and then played a guided meditation, and then Kent listened to it again. And the anxiety didn't go away, but he had a little shape to it. And so he considered that one of the really important pieces that got him on the path. And this was 10 or 15 years ago. And now he's a senior member here. Okay, so after the talk, I went up to his husband, David, and who doesn't come to the Zen Center, like a lot of partners. One partner comes, one partner does not. But I said, "David, thank you so much for helping Kent." And David said, "I don't remember that." And so I told Kent in the Dharma talk that I'd had this in our question and answer, that David had said he didn't remember it. And Kent burst into like uncontrollable laughter, this incredibly important thing in his life. His partner didn't remember it at all. Which for me is a good example of I do remember that talk though, Roberta, so that's not it, but it's a good example of small things that we do for people that are transformative in their lives. And for us, it may just be a little kind thing that happened, letting somebody go first, transformative for others. And for us, it's just part of the outflow of our practice. So this is a really important concept in the Mahayana. We do what our hand can do, but then we don't necessarily try to remember it all or keep track of it. So that's a good thing in terms of the hope world too, that we don't have to know all the good things we're doing, but we hope and aspire that they roll on continuously and help in ways we can't predict. I guess prediction is overrated.
I wanted to.
Hi, Gaelyn. This is Scott.
Oh, sorry.
Scott, hi.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you well.
This is Scott. Okay, I thank you for your thoughtful talk today. It resonates quite a bit for me. I was listening to the opening parts of the talk about the Paramitas and the various parts of the Paramitas. And near the end of the talk, you spoke about how your Sangha in Houston has come to terms with the being one of the hot spots, and how you have decided to proceed with vaccination status and masking and so forth. I'm going to be visiting the Midwest in 2 weeks, among other things, for a high school reunion. And I am going to be in an area of the country that I don't know people's vaccination status or their masking beliefs. And so I am really challenged here. I feel that I need to bring all of my understandings of the Paramitas to bear when I encounter the unvaccinated. So if my vow is to save other people, how does the Bodhisattva, engage as just one hand, as you said? How does the Bodhisattva save people who do not want to be saved? I'm trying to imagine myself in these in various situations in various parts of the reunion activities, engaging with people who believe it is their freedom not to be vaccinated and not to wear masks. And Arnold Schwarzenegger the other day gave a reprimand to people who believe that it's their right not to be vaccinated and not to wear masks. And he said something about, you have responsibility. With freedom comes responsibility, and that you can't go and do X, Y, and Z because you think it's your right or your freedom. You can't run a red light because you think it's your freedom to run the red light. You're risking running into somebody. So this is a process of quite a challenge for me to try and bring all of my understanding of the Paramitas and the Bodhisattva vow into play when I engage these people. And I am feeling worn out and tired and challenged when I think of how do I save those who do not want to be saved. I'd appreciate your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Sure. I think that you'll be surprised probably by the number who are vaccinated. So it's good. Also, the best way to protect them is to wear a mask yourself and then not hug them. So keep your mask on because they're the ones who are vulnerable. You not so much. So protect them by wearing a mask. And then for the rest of it, it's the same way that you would relate to people who smoke or eat bad foods or engage in risky behavior. We love people. I don't think it's my job to tell people to do something different. Just be clear about what your job is. The way I've been handling the few people that I run into that I know are not vaccinated, like for instance, the city water service guy, I just casually said, have you been vaccinated? Because I was curious. And he said, oh, no, I'm not getting vaccinated. And I said, well, what is the decision point for you? What will be the point where you decide? And then it turns it back on them. They get to reflect. And usually what they're saying is, I'm waiting for my friends. I want to see if my friends get sick. And I just recently thought of a comeback, which is, well, if you're waiting for your friends to get sick, why not you be the one who takes the chance to see if you get sick for the benefit of your friends? I thought of that as a comeback. But I don't think that engaging with people in an argumentative way is very helpful. But
yeah,
maybe you shouldn't travel. There's the other thing. And I'm not kidding.
I'm struggling with just whether to travel or not. And yes, fortunately, how do I say this? I try to see things in a non-dualistic way, but in terms, there are the unvaccinated and there are the vaccinated. How do we engage this non-dualistically?
By accessing the 10th it's the, which one? I think it's the 10th paramita, which is to thrive in the conventional. So one of the ways of practicing wisdom is to enhance your understanding of the conventional. The second way is to enhance your understanding of the absolute. And the third way, I can look it up, but basically bodhisattvas are very wise about the conventional realm. So we don't leave the conventional realm because we prefer non-duality. We stay in the conventional realm and understand what the consequences of vaccination and non-vaccination are. Conventional reality is very fun. So learning how to be free within conventional reality is part of what we're practicing.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, really. Embrace the conventional. It's really fun down here. But good luck, really. Good luck. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to jump in with a thank you, Gaelyn, for the teaching that as long as there have been bodhisattvas, it's, you know, or people practicing bodhisattva vows, you may bump into the problem of hubris or grandiosity, or, you know, or right, like, or thinking your hand should be bigger than it is, or have more tools in it than it does. I really love that. Maybe that's, as long as we have these vows, we have the risk of being confused about that, and the engagement of appreciating our life in its right size, and in our realm of influence in its right size. So thank you. I think there's a way that it can feel like, oh, well, the internet did that. You know? I love that you're pointing to, like, no, this has been there all along, you know, and to save all beings will always only happen, you know, one hand at a time.
You know, and thank you for bringing that out, because we don't usually think of bodhisattvas as having sort of problems, but, you know, I never thought about it, but Avalokiteshvara going down to the hell realm with the conviction that they could clear it out all by themselves is a kind of hubris. It's a charming kind of hubris, you know. I'm Avalokiteshvara, I can clear out this hell realm. And then it happened 11 times before Amida Buddha convinced her, that they couldn't do it by themselves. So that's, thank you very much, Sarah. So those 11 heads are basically a recognition that they couldn't do it by themselves, so they get to carry around 11 heads. Very good, thank you.
Okay, does that feel complete? Any burning questions? Okay, we will put the chant in the chat. Again.
For great bodhisattva
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to realize it.